For minutes, that was the distance between movement and annihilation, between a convoy still rolling under blackout discipline and a column of burning metal visible for kilometers. What entered Ukrainian drone range as a force package came out as wreckage, flame, and silence. By the time the rear vehicles understood the lead elements were dead, the road ahead was already gone. It happened in the kind of darkness armies have trusted for a century. A large Russian convoy was moving at night toward the active battle space, likely trying to do what heavy formations have always done after sunset. Close distance, mass movement, avoid artillery observation, and arrive near the line before dawn. The objective was simple enough. Reinforce the front, push ammunition, fuel, armor, and possibly infantry fighting vehicles into a sector under pressure. Use the night as cover. Use mass as protection. Use speed to reduce exposure. On paper, that logic still looks sound. In practice, this was Ukraine in the drone age. The terrain mattered. Open fields broken by tree lines, secondary roads, narrow farm tracks, small bridges, mud shoulders that looked passable until 40 tons of steel tried to leave the asphalt. At night, a convoy like that does not move as a fluid force. It moves as a chain. Vehicle after vehicle, light discipline, compressed spacing, command by radio, brake lights, and fear of losing contact. And that is exactly why the danger was larger than the Russians understood. Because once a convoy enters drone range in that environment, it is no longer just moving through terrain. It is moving into a sense of grid. A huge convoy at night is not just trucks on a road. It is a battlefield event. Every vehicle in that column represented something Ukraine could not afford to ignore. Tank transporters meant future armored assaults. Fuel bozers meant tempo. Ammunition carriers meant sustained fire. Air defense vehicles meant an attempt to shield the advance. Electronic warfare trucks meant the Russians expected drones and would try to blind them. Infantry carriers meant follow-on pressure once the logistics tail caught up. Even plain cargo trucks mattered. In modern war, supply is combat power wearing soft skin, and size changes equation. A small detachment can disappear. A large convoy cannot. It radiates heat. It raises dust. It creates engine noise. It slows at every bottleneck. It telegraphs intent. The bigger it gets, the harder it is to hide, and the more catastrophic it becomes if something goes wrong at the front of the column. That was the illusion at the heart of the movement. Russian doctrine still carries an old belief. If you move enough mass, protect it with electronic warfare, and time it under darkness, you can compress enemy reaction time, force the defender to choose badly, hit him before he can organize fires. But what they were entering was not an empty night. It was a contested sky filled with cheap observers, thermal cameras, relays, strike drones, artillery networks, and crews who had spent years learning how to turn a road into a coffin. What Russian planners likely counted on was concealment. What betrayed them was concentration. Night reduces human vision. It does not erase heat. It does not hide engine signatures from thermal optics. It does not protect radios from interception. It does not make a column smaller on a drone screen. And worst of all, it does not solve the geometry of a road march. A convoy can only move as fast as its slowest choke point. One disabled truck at the front forces breaking behind it. One wrong turn backs up everything. One bridge crossing compresses intervals. One hesitation under threat turns spacing into clustering. In daylight, crews can improvise. At night, they cling to the route. That is the weakness Ukrainian drone operators hunt for. Not just vehicles, patterns. The hidden vulnerability was not that the convoy existed. It was that it entered the kill zone as a predictable line, inside a battlefield where detection and strike had been fused into one fast chain. Observation drones did not need to destroy it by themselves. They only had to see it, track it, and hold it in place long enough for other systems to arrive. And by then, the situation had already changed. The first strike probably was not the first contact. Long before anything exploded, someone was watching. A Ukrainian drone team, perhaps operating from a concealed launch point near the front, likely picked up the convoy through thermal contrast or movement on a known route. In these sectors, crews do not search the whole war. They watch approach corridors, road junctions, bridge crossings, tree-line exits, and stretches of ground where vehicles must commit. Night makes those routes fewer, not more. The drone rises quietly, not high enough to silhouette against the moon, not low enough to be heard clearly over engines. On the screen, the convoy is not dramatic yet, just a string of heat sources sliding along a dark road. But the meaning is immediate. Size, direction, composition, speed. Then the first decision is made, not to strike the nearest vehicle, to strike the right one. That distinction is everything. A convoy is defeated less by total firepower than by intelligent sequencing. Kill the lead element and you stop movement. Kill the rear element and you trap the middle. Hit fuel and the road becomes inferno. Hit air defense and the sky opens for follow-on drones. Hit command or electronic warfare and the column loses its nervous system. What they did not know was that the battle was already underway before the first munition dropped. Because the drone was not just observing, it was feeding a kill chain. The first explosions likely struck with surgical intent. Maybe an FPV drone slammed into the lead vehicle. Maybe loitering munitions hit a truck at a tight bend. Maybe artillery, pre-registered on the route, landed just ahead of the column the moment coordinates were confirmed. The exact weapon matters less than the effect. The front stopped. And once the front stopped, the convoy ceased being a convoy. It became a target array. Rear drivers braked hard. Some tried to reverse. Others pulled toward the shoulder and found soft ground. Vehicles behind compressed. Engines idled. Radios lit up. Commands collided. In darkness, nobody wants to leave the road. Nobody wants to bunch up. Everybody does both. Then came the second cut. A strike near the rear, or near the convoy center, would have been enough to split it into segments. That is how a moving formation turns into isolated pockets. Crews in the middle no longer know whether to wait, push, dismount, or scatter. If air defense vehicles are buried deep in the column, their arcs are blocked. If jammers are in the wrong place, coverage collapses exactly where the drone threat is strongest. That was the breakthrough Ukrainian operators needed. Not destruction yet, immobilization. Because a stationary convoy at night is easier to map, easier to prioritize, and far harder to save. This is where Russian assumptions often collide with the actual war. Yes, electronic warfare can disrupt drones. Yes, jammers can break links, degrade video, and force misses. But electronic warfare is not magic. It has sectors, power limits, setup delays, and blind spots. On a road, in motion, under attack, at night, inside a compressed convoy, its effectiveness drops fast, and drone crews know this. They stagger frequencies. They use multiple platforms. They relay observation from a safer distance. They strike jammers first when visible. They exploit the seconds between detection and activation. Some drones can continue their run even under degraded control. Others do not need a perfect link if the target is trapped on a road and burning bright. Meanwhile, the human pressure inside the convoy becomes unbearable. A truck driver hears one detonation ahead and another behind. He cannot see the full road. He cannot tell whether the threat is from the sky, from artillery, or from sabotage teams nearby. He knows only that staying still is death, and moving forward may be impossible. Infantry dismount into darkness, but darkness in open country offers less cover than it promises. Tree lines become magnets for follow-up fire. Vehicles try and turn around jackknife. Tank transporters cannot pivot easily. Fuel trucks become liabilities everyone wants to get away from, but the road no longer allows it. This is the point where a formation's morale is tested not by casualties alone, but by disorientation. The Russians thought the night would simplify the fight. Instead, it stripped them of awareness. And that was only the beginning. Once the convoy was fixed, the battle likely widened. Observation drones kept station. Strike drones came in lower and faster. Artillery adjusted onto clusters of halted vehicles. If the route crossed open farmland, there was nowhere to disperse without bogging down or becoming silhouetted against burning wrecks. If ammunition carriers were present, secondary explosions would have done their own work, sending fragments through nearby trucks and turning isolated hits into chain damage. This is where logistics columns die differently than armored spearheads. A tank can absorb punishment and still fight for a time. A truck convoy cannot. Tires burn, fuel ignites, canvas and crates feed the fire. One destroyed transporter can block an entire lane. One burning fueler can deny movement through heat and smoke alone. Crews abandoning vehicles add to confusion, crossing the road, diving into ditches, shouting over engines and drone buzz. From above, what had been a column now looked like beads of flame on a black thread. And every burning vehicle solved a problem for the attackers. It illuminated the next target. Night protection became night exposure. The very darkness that was supposed to hide the convoy now made each fireball more useful. Thermal signatures sharpened. Smoke marked wind direction. Stopped vehicles became reference points for indirect fire. Ukrainian teams no longer had to search for the convoy. The convoy was highlighting itself. The real danger now was not a single strike. It was accumulation. A road blocked in 3 places. Air defense damaged or forced offline. Jamming disrupted. Drivers panicked. Vehicles unable to maneuver. Follow-up fires landing on a formation that could neither advance nor withdraw. At that stage, for minutes is not the total destruction time. It is the moment the outcome becomes irreversible. The most dangerous illusion in war is the belief that disaster can still be contained after the system holding it together has already failed. Once a large convoy loses movement, communication, and spacing under drone observation, it begins to collapse in place. Some vehicles survive the first hits, but are abandoned. Others remain mechanically intact, yet tactically dead, trapped behind wreckage or fire. Units that were supposed to arrive together enter the battle separately or not at all. Fuel never reaches the forward line. Ammunition never gets distributed. Reinforcements arrive late, fragmented, or stunned, and that damage travels far beyond the road itself. At the operational level, a destroyed convoy means more than burnt metal. It means a delayed offensive, a weakened sector, hungry guns, stranded armor, broken timetables. It means commanders at the front asking for a resupply that is no longer coming. It means staff officers rewriting plans before dawn because a route that existed at midnight is a graveyard by 004. At the micro level, it is even harsher. Crews crouch in drainage ditches while drones circle overhead. Medics trying to reach wounded men through burning cargo. Vehicle commanders deciding whether to stay with their machines or run from them. Air defense gunners scanning darkness for shapes they hear but cannot fix. Radio traffic turning from orders into fragments. This is how modern attrition works. Not through one grand charge, but through the collapse of movement under constant surveillance. By morning, the evidence would have been unmistakable. Charred vehicles nose to tail on a road that had become impassable. Wrecked cargo trucks, blown trailers, burned fuelers, perhaps armored escorts blackened beside softer vehicles they were supposed to protect. Survivors scattered into tree lines or withdrawn in small groups. The surviving elements of the convoy no longer functioning as a formation, only as remnants. The losses in such a strike are measured in more than destroyed platforms. They are measured in timing, initiative, and confidence. A force that cannot move securely at night loses one of the last traditional advantages of large mechanized warfare. A commander who cannot trust mass road movement must disperse, slow down, hide more, and deliver less. Every one of those adjustments concedes momentum. That is the larger lesson.
Here, the battlefield has changed faster than doctrine. Mass still matters, but concentration now carries a price that can be paid in minutes. Night still conceals, but only from the eye, not from the sensor. Electronic warfare still matters, but it no longer guarantees sanctuary. In a convoy that once represented strength can now become the perfect target, linear, heat-rich, road-bound, and dependent on uninterrupted movement. What looked like a reinforcement mission became a precision ambush. What looked like protected movement became exposure. What looked like battlefield depth became a narrow corridor with no exit. That is why the title matters. It was not just that a huge Russian convoy entered Ukrainian drone range at night. It was that in modern war, entering range is sometimes the defeat. If you want more battlefield breakdowns told at the level of tactics, systems, and the human decisions inside the fire stay with the channel.